has confirmed that these meetings took place, during which the Separatists were seeking financial support from the U.S. to leave Canada. There are many words one can use to describe this kind of behavior, and we've heard a lot of those words today. But I'll just say that this news is extremely disturbing, and it is completely unacceptable. Albertans are proud to be Albertan, and we are proud to be Canadian. These people have no authority to be negotiating with other countries. I feel like here in Ottawa we've had a lot of people yelling a lot over the last couple of years on the issue of foreign interference. This is clear foreign interference. We've heard as well today from the Treaty 6, 7, and 8 chiefs in Alberta. They are rightly speaking out against the constitutionality of separatism, the need to respect treaty rights, and respecting Indigenous people in Alberta. Alberta's New Democrats stand with the First Nations in Alberta, and we stand with their actions being taken against the separatist movement. Today I want to be clear about one thing. This is Danielle Smith's fault. Danielle Smith caused all of this. By pandering to the separatists, by coddling them, by cozying up to Trump, by cozying up to those who want Alberta to be the 51st state, all for her own political gain. She has caused this. And it is time for Danielle Smith to take a stand. No more word salad. A sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, her favorite phrase. What does that even mean? An Albertan recently told me, that sounds like me saying, I want to be a single man within the confines of my marriage. There is no playing both sides here. Albertans are smarter than the Premier gives us credit for. And it's time for the Premier to unequivocally denounce separatism, to stand with Albertans, to stand with Canadians. She has a beautiful chance to do that today. She had a beautiful chance to do that today in front of the Prime Minister, in front of the other premiers before she left Ottawa. She chose not to do that. She couldn't even bring herself to denounce the people who are conspiring with Americans to take over our country. She couldn't even do that. She talks about separatism being a pressure valve release, but she never talks about the fact that she is the one applying the pressure. And it is time for Albertans to hear from the Premier where she truly stands. You know, this week, all of Alberta's New Democrats, MLAs, including me, signed a very simple pledge. And it just says, I affirm that I'm a proud Albertan and a proud Canadian. I'm opposed to separatism, and I'll make my position known and clear to my constituents. To date, not a single one of Danielle Smith's MLAs has signed this pledge. I got a blank one right here. See you at the airport, Premier. I'll bring a pen. But of course, she's not going to do it. So far, no member of her government has signed, and her silence speaks volumes. I want to say something to Albertans watching. Look, we live in the best province in the greatest nation in the world. We've contributed so much to this place. We've contributed so much to Confederation. Is it perfect? No, it's a big, complicated, bruised, and battered country. But there's nowhere else I'd rather be. And there's nowhere else I'd rather be working to make this country work even better. So yes, let's fix the federal regulatory process. Let's fix the fiscal framework within the Federation. And let's focus on the things that Albertans really care about. A collapsed healthcare system. A public education system that's not working for so many students. Bringing back energy jobs, reducing the cost of living, making the Alberta Advantage real again. Our Premier needs to be a real leader. She needs to focus on the things that matter. She needs to end this debate now. She needs to denounce separatism. If she can't, or if she won't, it's time to elect a government that will. And Alberta's New Democrats and I are ready to be that government. Happy to take questions.
Do you agree with Premier Eby's suggestion, Ian Bailey, Globe and Mail, do you agree with Premier Eby's suggestion earlier today that there's a kind of treason in the air with this sort of engagement where sovereigntists are engaging with a government that frankly doesn't have Canada's interests at heart?
Well, thanks for that question, Ian. And I think that the critical thing is, Premier Eby chose his words. I would simply say that these folks have no democratic legitimacy. Nobody elected them to do this. And they are actively negotiating with a government, a foreign government, that has stated at the highest levels that it wants to destabilize the Canadian Federation. We've heard from the Secretary of the Treasury that he'd like to take Alberta. We've heard from a representative, a congressman, who often says what the White House is thinking about the Alberta separatists. Why would a guy from Tennessee even have heard of the Alberta separatism movement? It's clear that there is something afoot here. And this kind of conspiring with foreign entities against the democratic will of Canadians is something that should concern us all.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, but what would you say to Albertans who do feel that they would want to support this kind of referendum? And would your party reach out to these separatists? Or?
Yeah, as we have done, this summer, when the Premier was doing a series of fake town halls that she called the Alberta Next panels, we also had a series of town halls, and we also spoke with Albertans. We knocked on over 200,000 doors. We showed up at every small town parade, rodeo. We went to all the powwows, and we went to dog parks. And we also had a series of these town halls, 10 of them, across the whole province. Thousands of Albertans came. And what we heard loud and clear from Albertans is, yeah, there are concerns about our relationship with the federal government. There always have been. But we also heard from these Albertans that they are fiercely proud Canadians. They're fiercely proud of our veterans. They're fiercely proud of what we built together as a nation. But they don't feel like they have a voice because the Premier doesn't represent that voice. The Premier has never said, I'm a proud Canadian. And so we want to give them that voice. And to those who are pursuing separatism, many of them are just saying, look, I want to send a signal. I want to show something that we're going to stand up for something. The folks who are going to the U.S. are not that. They are not people who would be appeased by a pipeline or a better health care deal. There's something quite different. And they're willing to gamble with the future of Alberta with the Trump regime. And quite frankly, I think most Albertans are quite horrified by that behavior.
Mr. Nenshi, Mark Ramsey with the Toronto Star.
Hi, Mark.
Jeff Rath told my colleague Alex Boyd, who's in Calgary, that, quote, the socialist federalists in Edmonton huddled around Nenshi aren't, quote, real Albertan. What do you think of that personal attack?
I don't know where Jeffrey Rath was born. I do know that he has been censured by the Law Society of Alberta a number of times for not acting in the best interests of perhaps his clients. I shouldn't say he's been censured, but he's certainly been investigated by the people of Alberta. But this isn't about me, and it's not about Jeffrey Rath. But any time you start saying somebody's a real Albertan and somebody isn't, you show your true colors. I believe in an Alberta where everyone who chooses to live in Alberta gets to be an Albertan. I live in an Alberta where I grew up in a poor family in northeast Calgary that succeeded because Alberta took a bet on us. I went to great public schools. I graduated from great public universities. I explored the city on public transit. I learned to swim badly in a public pool. I haunted the public library. I lived in a community that wanted me to succeed. And if Mr. Rath thinks that doesn't make me a real Albertan, he should look in the mirror, because real Albertans give a hand to everyone who wants to be an Albertan.
Thank you. And I understand you met with interim NDP leader Don Davies yesterday. I want to ask you about the federal NDP. They're having a leadership race right now. Are you backing anyone? And what do you think of people who've suggested Avi Lewis, who seems to be out fundraising everyone, would be divisive, especially as an Albertan where there is a history of tension there? What do you think?
So let me highlight a couple of things. Number one is I don't belong to any federal political party because I believe that my focus is on Alberta and I need to be able to work with anyone who's in power. And what's really interesting is most people don't realize that the New Democrats form either the government or the opposition in every province from Ontario west. So our provincial parties, including the Alberta Party, are very strong and very much in the ascendance. And we are able to show Canadians, Albertans in my case, what a smart, pragmatic, ethical, competent government would look like. And that's my job. I need to do that every day. The federal party is in perhaps a different place where they have different goals that they want to have for Canadians to see them, and that's fine. And as Premier Canoe has said, the members of the federal party will elect the right leader for them. And I'm sure that they will. Now, that said, I certainly have had the chance to talk to the three front-running candidates and to give them a sense of understanding what's going on the ground in Alberta. Alberta in the past has been the majority of members of the federal NDP. It's still a big chunk. I don't know the final numbers. But I think it's important for all of them to understand what's happening in Alberta and what Albertans are looking for, not just from me and from a better provincial government, but also from the federal New Democrats.
An Abby Lewis leadership would hurt your chances in the work that you're trying to do? And what did you say to him?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, the UCP are desperate. They're losing control of their own party all around them. They will lash out in any possible way, and they do. They don't like it when I talk about the Smith-Carney alliance, but they were always happy to talk about the Notley-Trudeau alliance. There's no more Trudeau to kick around, so I presume they're going to start talking about the Nenshi-Lewis alliance since they can't say the Nenshi-Carney alliance. Who cares? Albertans are smarter than that. Albertans know what we stand for and will make it work. And yes, certainly part of my conversation with Mr. Lewis was the same as my conversation with Ms. McPherson and with Mr. Ashton, which is just to understand that Albertans care right now, as do all Canadians, about three things above all. They care about the cost of living crisis, they care about the collapse of the healthcare system, and, they care about the future of jobs in the economy. And in Alberta in particular, we care about the future of the jobs in the economy in a way that makes sense for our environmental requirements as well. So if you can speak to Albertans about the things that really matter, not the things Danielle Smith talks about, not the corrupt privatization of healthcare, not separatism, but the things that make people's lives better every day, then Albertans will certainly have a willing ear.
And
So you're not you're not endorsing a candidate.
I'm not even voting. I'm not a member of the party.
Sorry, yeah, this is Ritika Sheila from the Hill Times. Welcome to Ottawa, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. Except really cold right now.
Indeed. So just on a slightly different note, I wonder what you have to say about BC NDP Premier David Eby's objections to some aspects of Alberta MOU. Mm-hmm. He still maintained his red line over the oil tanker ban, for example, and he doesn't seem too pleased with the new idea of the new pipeline. So I wonder what you have to say about that.
You know, Conservative governments in Canada over the last many decades have built precisely 0 miles of pipeline to Tidewater. The government that actually got the Trans Mountain expansion built, something that is propping up the entire Canadian economy right now, was Rachel Notley's NDP government in conjunction with the federal government at the time. And I had, shall we say, more than a front row seat to those conversations as the mayor of Calgary. And as soon as Premier Smith started talking about this in this MOU, I realized she was going about it exactly the wrong way. What's going on in the MOU makes sense. They are things that I personally have been advocating for over a decade. But to put out that MOU without having conversations with the Premier of British Columbia, without previously having conversations with the coastal First Nations, just puts people's back up against a wall. And it makes it almost impossible for them to be able to agree when you treat them that way. On the other hand, I don't mind saying that I have had a number of conversations with Premier Eby. And we've talked a lot about the things we agree on and the things we differ on. I wish the Premier Smith had done the same. So I'm still optimistic that we will be able to build export infrastructure for our most important export commodity, oil and gas. I'm very confident and hopeful that we'll be able to do that to the West Coast, whether north or south. There are very good reasons to support Premier Canoe's work to build a real port in Churchill, Manitoba. And I still dream that we can build a real nation-spanning project in Energy East. The Trans Mountain expansion helped us understand how to do that while not being just sensitive to the environment, but by using these projects to further our environmental goals. It showed us how we can do that by working with Indigenous peoples to get prosperity through these projects. But it all starts with a basis of respect. It starts by putting away the ego, and it starts by talking about win-win solutions. None of those things Danielle Smith is doing. She's now demanding that the federal government approve the pipeline project by June. But here's the thing. There's no project. There's no route. There's no proponents. There's no consent or even discussion with the Indigenous communities and people along those routes. So it's not a pipeline, it's a pipe dream. And we need to work quickly in these fragile economic times to get this stuff built. And the MOU, you know, people ask, was it a win for Alberta? I would say it was a goal in the first period. But there's a lot of hockey left to play. And that has to be played in a thoughtful, deliberate manner that really looks for solutions that help people win along the lines. The other thing that I'll mention on this is that I've been chatting with a lot of people in industry and asking, you know, since the MOU has been in place, are things better? And the universal answer I've gotten is no. The talk that the Premier and the Prime Minister have had about cutting red tape, creating more efficient approval processes has not ended up in reality. Indeed, things may have slowed down because people are waiting for the major project office. And the vast majority of projects will not be big enough to go to the major projects office. And so they're still mired in the same or worse bureaucracy than before. So if we got to get this right, if we take the Prime Minister at his word that it's time to build again, there's a lot of work to be done throughout the layers of the bureaucracy.
Say you were in favor of the pause to the clean electricity regulations in Alberta?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. So I've talked about that for a few years now, and the challenge with the clean electricity regulations was not their goal, but it was the one-size-fits-all application. And there were 3 provinces in Canada for whom the timelines were extremely aggressive and would likely require billions of dollars of investment in technology that would be surpassed by renewable technology as that comes online. And so I haven't seen any of the details around this, but I think certainly there is a way to get to a much greener and a net zero power grid in Alberta that the previous clean electricity regulations actually made more difficult. So the proof will be in the pudding as to where the new regulations land, but there is an opportunity to do something really good here.
What, for Canadians who are watching these developments today with the Premier Eby's comments, Danielle Smith's comments, all the Premier's comments on Alberta, on Alberta sovereignty and separation and such, what do you think they should make of all of this? Is there any warning in all of this, or what would you pass on to them as something they should understand?
You know, for about a year and a half now, I've been trying to make the case that we really have to take the threat of Alberta separatism seriously. And we have to look at some of the challenges, I hate the word grievances, but some of the challenges that Alberta has had in the Federation and determine how to fix them. What I'm worried about now is that some people are not taking it seriously and some people are taking the Premier at her word that if you just give her everything she wants, this will go away. It won't. There are ways of delivering real, tangible wins to Albertans that we really have to be looking at, and they're not the things that Premier Smith is talking about. So I was very pleased to see some of the other premiers today. You know, we Albertans have a strong independent streak, and we're like, hey, why are other people talking about our business? But I think it was really helpful to hear from some of the other premiers about their very real concerns and their desires to maintain a strong Alberta, and there are ways they can help do that too. But I got to tell you, this little pledge in front of me, it's not a trap. There's nothing in it that says anything that should be difficult for anyone who has sworn an oath to serve as a member of the Legislative Assembly to sign. It doesn't denounce any government legislation. It simply says I'm a proud Canadian and I'm opposed to separatism. So for me and for my MLA colleagues, this was the easiest thing in the world to sign. Didn't have to think about it for a second. And the fact that not one UCP MLA to date has chosen to sign it, despite being elected in an election not even 3 years ago, in which none of this came up, I think speaks volumes about the Premier and about her caucus. And I'm looking forward to some of my government caucus colleagues to actually stand up and say, you know what, this has gone too far, it's too dangerous, and we've got to stand up for Canada. Let's remember that Danielle Smith on her radio show this summer when she was asked, why are you pandering to the separatists, did not say, because we need a better deal with Ottawa, because Albertan concerns have not been heard. She said, because if I don't, my party will split and I'll lose the next election. So Danielle Smith, Canada is way more valuable than your political skin.
What should the Prime Minister do? If the Prime Minister called you up and asked for your advice, what do you think Mr. Carney should do about this file?
I love it when people call me and ask for my advice. It's like my love language. And I'm very, very willing to freely dispense my advice, which is worth exactly what you paid for it. But I would say to the Prime Minister, as someone who grew up in Alberta, as someone who graduated high school in Edmonton, you understand the historic nature of some of the challenges that Alberta has had. Let's start addressing those, but let's address the real ones. Danielle Smith says, get us out of the CPP, the Canada Pension Plan. Give us the ability to appoint federal judges. None of that does anything. That type of separatism, the Danielle Smith type of separatism, it doesn't build hospital beds. It doesn't reduce the cost of living. It doesn't make our classrooms stronger. It doesn't secure jobs for the future. It makes life way more expensive. And as we heard even today from the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, it freezes investment because no one wants to invest or create jobs in a place when they don't know what country that place will be in. And so the way to deliver wins to Albertans, Prime Minister, is not by letting Alberta appoint federal judges. Nobody cares about that. It's not by taking away the hard-earned pensions of people who've paid into the CPP their whole lives. It's about creating a system where Albertans can reduce their cost of living and develop better public services and create great jobs for the future. And there are ways that the federal government can help with all of those.
I wonder, while you're here, have you had any meetings with any federal ministers or anybody in the PMO? Or
Yeah, I have. So the nature of, I'm not at liberty to talk about the nature of those discussions, but that was really the reason I was here. I wanted to really meet with government officials across the spectrum to be able to really help them understand what's going on the ground in Alberta. There are 2 government MPs from Alberta, and they're doing a great job of letting the folks know. Of course, there's an NDP MP from Alberta who's doing a great job. She and I share a constituency of speaking up for Alberta here. And of course, the Conservative MPs from Alberta are speaking for Alberta. But I thought it would be helpful for government officials to hear I'm pausing on the word non-partisan, shall we say non-federally partisan, view from the ground on what's really going on in the province and things that they can do. So it's been very, very productive for me to be able to do that here.
government officials, you mean just the MPs or?
All over the map. Senior official, why don't I just say senior officials, elected and not. Is there anyone on Zoom?
For those who joined on Zoom, if you have a question, please use the raise hand function. Pour ceux qui sont joints à nous sur Zoom, si vous avez une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction main levée. Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci.
Okay. Merci tout le monde. Bonsoir.